Have you ever wondered what it feels like to face wild nature in its rawest form? To stand at the edge of a powerful river and witness a life or death moment unfold right before your eyes? This is the story of one man's unexpected choice in the heart of the African wilderness. The Mara River flows through Kenya's famous Maasai Mara, a place known for its breathtaking beauty, but also for the many dangers that lurk beneath its surface. After heavy rains, the river swells, its waters rushing fast and wild, hiding sharp rocks, tree branches, and even deadly crocodiles. It is a place where survival is never guaranteed. If you enjoy stories about the incredible bonds between humans and wildlife, make sure to stay with us. This is not just a rescue. It is a powerful reminder of the surprising ways nature can connect us all. Keep watching to discover what happened next. David Thompson, a 34-year-old wildlife photographer, has spent more than 8 years documenting the lives of animals here. He is no stranger to the wild, always patient, careful, and respectful. David follows a simple but important rule: never interfere with nature. He believes in capturing moments without changing them. On this particular day, the river was swollen and fierce. The muddy banks were soft and slippery from the recent storms. David was quietly observing from a safe distance, his camera ready, when something small caught his eye. Near the edge of the river, a tiny lion cub was struggling to stay on the slippery mud. It was barely bigger than a house cat and looked weak and frightened. Suddenly, the ground beneath the cub gave way. With a soft splash and a desperate cry, the little cub tumbled into the raging river. David's heart pounded as he watched the helpless animal fight against the current. His mind raced with the rules he always followed. He knew the dangers of stepping into the river. The powerful water could sweep him away, and the crocodiles nearby were deadly. But more than rules, a deeper feeling took hold, a strong urge to help, to save this small life. In that moment, David made a decision. He dropped his camera bag, leapt into the cold, rushing water, and began swimming toward the struggling cub. The Mara River during flood season is no place for the faint-hearted. Its waters roar with fierce power, rushing fast and wild. Beneath the surface, unseen dangers lurk. Sharp branches, heavy logs, and rocks waiting to strike. The river is also home to crocodiles, silent hunters that make the waters even more deadly. As David struggled through the swirling current, the river seemed determined to drag him under. Suddenly, something heavy and hard hit his left shoulder, a submerged log hidden by the muddy water. The blow nearly knocked him unconscious. For a moment, the world spun and he fought to stay awake. But David's will to save the tiny cub pushed him forward. He swallowed the pain and pressed on, reaching out desperately. Then, at last, his hands found a little lion. The cub was soaked, trembling, and weak, clinging tightly to David's neck with surprising strength. David could feel the cub's tiny heart pounding wildly against his chest, a mix of fear, exhaustion, and shock from the terrifying ordeal. The cub's soft cries were barely audible over the roar of the river, but they touched something deep inside David. Now came the hardest part, the journey back to shore. The current fought them every step of the way, pulling and twisting, threatening to drag them both downstream into the crocodile-infested pools. Every stroke was a battle, but David refused to give up. With every ounce of strength and courage, he pushed through the raging water, determined to reach safety and give the little lion a chance to live. As David finally reached the shallower water near the riverbank, his body was spent, gasping for every breath. But what he saw next made his heart pound even harder. The entire lion pride was there. Not just the 5 adult lionesses he had glimpsed earlier, but also a massive male lion with a dark mane, all standing silently in a semicircle around the water's edge. Their amber eyes locked onto him, and the cub he held tightly. David's mind raced, trying to find a way out, but he quickly realized there was no easy escape. The water was still chest-high, and 6 powerful lions blocked his path to safety. Every muscle in his body tensed, knowing that any sudden move might trigger an attack that could cost his life in seconds. Lions are fiercely protective of their young, and here he was, a human stranger holding one of their precious cubs. But something unexpected happened. The largest lioness, the pride's matriarch, took a slow, calm step closer to the water. David held his breath, ready for the worst. Yet, instead of aggression, Her eyes held a strange look, not anger, not threat, but something like recognition. The cub in David's arms began making soft mewing sounds, calling to its family. This seemed to break the tense silence. The matriarch stepped even closer, stopping just a few feet away. And then, in a moment that defied all David's expectations, she lowered her head, almost as if bowing. This strange and gentle gesture lasted for several seconds, while the other lions remained perfectly still, as if witnessing a powerful, silent ceremony. When the lioness raised her head, she looked David directly in the eyes. But it was not the cold stare of a predator. It was a calm, steady look that seemed to say, "We understand you." The lioness's unexpected gesture was just the beginning. After holding eye contact with David, she slowly moved even closer. Then, something incredible happened. She began to gently groom him. Her rough tongue touched his forehead, the same way she would care for her own pride members. David stayed completely still, barely daring to breathe. This powerful wild animal was showing him trust and acceptance, things he never imagined possible. Around them, the other lionesses began to relax. Their stiff, watchful stances softened as they stepped closer, their eyes calm and curious rather than hostile. The massive male lion, who had been standing back, now padded quietly to the water's edge. He lowered himself to rest, a clear sign that he felt safe and peaceful with David nearby. It was as if the pride was acknowledging him not as a threat, but as a friend, someone who had risked his own life to save one of their own. Carefully, David began moving toward the shore, still holding the cub. The lions parted naturally to create a path for him, almost like an honor guard escorting a respected guest. When David reached the muddy bank, he knelt and gently placed the cub down. The reunion was immediate and full of emotion. The matriarch rushed forward, nuzzling the cub and checking carefully for any injuries. The other lionesses gathered around, each sniffing and examining the little one as if welcoming him back home. Even the male lion approached last, lowering his massive head to touch the cub softly with his nose. David watched, overwhelmed by the raw power and tenderness of this wild family, feeling honored to witness a moment few humans ever see, a true bond of trust and gratitude between species. Just as David began to slowly step back, giving the pride space to settle, something unexpected happened. The matriarch looked up from her cub and made a low, gentle rumbling sound, a call unlike any roar or growl David had ever heard in all his years photographing wildlife. That soft, almost conversational sound seemed to signal the pride. Instantly, the other lions rose to their feet and arranged themselves into two neat lines. Together, they formed a clear path from where David stood to the acacia tree, where his camera equipment lay. David could hardly believe what was happening. The lions were not just standing there. They were creating an escort, a protective guard to safely guide him away from the river. The matriarch took the lead position on David's right, while the massive male lion stepped to his left. The other four lionesses flanked him perfectly, maintaining distance and moving slowly with precision. David found himself walking in the center of this majestic procession, surrounded by these fierce apex predators who treated him not as prey, but as an honored guest. The rescued cub, now strong enough to walk, trotted beside his mother, occasionally brushing against David's leg, a quiet gesture of trust and familiarity that left David speechless. As the majestic pride reached David's equipment, they came to a gentle halt. The matriarch stepped forward one last time, her large head tilting slightly as she carefully studied David's face. In that quiet moment, something incredible happened. She pressed her forehead softly against his, a greeting lions share only with those they deeply trust within their pride. David whispered a heartfelt, "Thank you," not knowing if the lions understood his words, but feeling the sincerity of the moment anyway. The matriarch released a soft chuff, a sound of calm and farewell. One by one, each lion approached David, briefly touching their noses to him or rubbing gently against his legs. Even the massive male lion joined in, bumping David's shoulder with his enormous head before stepping back. The rescued cub was the last to say goodbye. Sitting directly in front of David, the young lion tilted his head up and let out a small, soft mew, almost like a thank you. David reached down to stroke the cub's head for the final time. In that silent exchange, both understood that this extraordinary moment would never be repeated. As the pride turned and moved away toward the shade of distant trees to rest, David remained standing alone, soaked and deeply moved by the unforgettable experience he had just lived through. David stood alone by his equipment, dripping wet and overwhelmed with emotion. His waterproof camera had captured every single second of this extraordinary encounter. Later, wildlife experts would verify the footage, and animal behaviorists would study it carefully. The story would spread worldwide, featured in documentaries and inspiring millions. One of the most renowned scientists, Dr. Jane Goodall, would call this event one of the most remarkable examples of communication and gratitude between different species ever recorded. Yet, for David, the technical praise was less important than the profound truth he had experienced that day. In the muddy floodwaters, surrounded by powerful wild lions who should have seen him as a threat, he witnessed something rare, a genuine connection that crossed the boundaries between human and animal. This was not just instinctive behavior. It was an expression of gratitude, trust, and recognition. Emotions once thought to be unique to humans, but now proven to exist in the wild as well. The rescued lion cub grew stronger each day, growing into a healthy adult under the watchful eyes of his pride. Over the month that followed, David continued his work in the Maasai Mara, photographing the incredible wildlife he had dedicated his life to capturing. On several occasions, he encountered the same pride. Each time, the matriarch, the very lioness who had trusted him at the river, acknowledged David with a gentle chuffing sound. The one small cub, now a powerful lion, would often approach David's vehicle without any sign of fear. Sometimes, he would rest in the cool shade it provided, as if recognizing a friend. Locals and safari guides began to call David Simba's brother, a name that spoke to the special bond he had formed with the pride. Though tourists came hoping to witness something similar, no one ever quite recreated the magic and trust of that first unforgettable meeting. Inspired by David's extraordinary story, Dr. Becky founded the Thompson Mara Research Foundation. This organization set out to study the intelligence, emotions, and social behaviors displayed by the lion pride during the rescue. Their work opened new doors to understanding the complex minds of wild animals. David's experience proved something important. The boundaries between human consciousness and animal awareness are more fluid than we ever thought. This encounter was not simply about animal behavior. It was a powerful demonstration of values usually considered uniquely human. Gratitude, honor, and moral recognition crossed species lines that day. For David Thompson, what began as a routine day of photographing wildlife transformed into a life-changing lesson. It reminded him and all who would hear his story that compassion is a universal language, one spoken and understood by creatures far beyond our usual understanding.